Hello, this is Baron von Richthofen, and coming off an exciting match in which PG was able to defeat Fnatic Gaming, we have PG Phaeton Gaming versus Team Green Forest. And you might not recognize either of these teams, but Team Green Forest, they are an all-platinum team. They are strong players. They have been involved in some tournaments, just not some of the really top competitive teams. So it should be a really strong match to watch. I'm going to pause for a second so I can take a look at the picks. We see that Phaeton Gaming, they are going to have Galio top with Karthus mid, Olaf in the jungle, and Caitlyn and Alistar bot, just like last game. The Galio pick, really interesting. You don't see a lot of Galio, but I think since the buffs, people recognize how strong he can potentially be. And with that teleport, he could really add a lot to a team fight, teleporting in, throwing down the ultimate. The real strength of Galio is that he has great ranged poke along with his ultimate. Like he's got the great disable, just like kind of like a Mumu, except that his isn't a snare; it's an actual taunt. So he's got the great disable, but then he's also got the ranged harass like a Gragas would, throwing out those barrels. And then you also have the fantastic damage of Karthus as the game progresses. His ultimate really is just going to do a ton of damage, and Galio pulling the enemy team on top of Karthus really is just a scary kind of concept. The enemy team, they will have Cassiopeia mid versus Karthus, Tristana and Sona bottom, Gangplank in the jungle, and Udyr top. So, very interesting matchups. I'll let it roll as I continue to talk about it. Cassiopeia, very strong champion in lane and later in the game. She should potentially be looking to harass Karthus down, though they do have kind of similar harass mechanics. Cassiopeia, it is a little bit easier to land her damage than it is Karthus, so it'll be very interesting to see how that works out. And Cassiopeia is actually an exceedingly strong champion against heavy melee comps. They don't have that kind of a comp. Hopefully she can stone Galio before he gets in. She does have the great damage output, and chasing people down, Cassiopeia is really a fright. But, I don't know that she's the best champ to go up against this AoE team that they have, and then Olaf will be able to ult through Cassiopeia's ult and potentially try and take her down with his kind of burst DPS. Sona and Tristana, very similar to the lane we saw last game against Fnatic, where they ran Cog and Sona. And Sona, not the strongest champion in lane. She does have a little bit of sustain, and if she's able to get off her harass, she will have that. But it'll be primarily a farming lane, I believe. Caitlyn and Tristana will just be mostly sitting there fighting for CS, won't be harassing each other too much. Or if the harass does come, it'll primarily come from Caitlyn's end. So Sona and Tristana will want to watch out for Alistar's pulverize and headbutt and everything, that they don't get caught out of position. Udyr against Galio, really a great pick. You see Udyr a lot, but the one weakness of Galio is he's not the strongest laner. He's really good once you can get him a little bit later in the game. And they actually are going to run Karthus top, even though Galio has the teleport, which I didn't consider, but is a really good decision. Cassiopeia will try and harass down Galio, and she will have a little bit easier time harassing him down than she would for Karthus. However, I wasn't even sure that Galio could lane against Udyr, because Udyr, fantastic in that melee range. Galio would basically be forced to just sit back and throw his nukes in range CS, which is going to push his lane, make him more vulnerable to ganks, and really not get him as much CS as he would like. So, good decision there. Karthus will want to watch out. Karthus doesn't have the best mobility, but the wall will generally protect Karthus from ganks very well. You see that dot going out onto Galio. It's pretty easy to hit when he's got to come in and, get that melee CS, so he'll want to watch out, maybe try and be a little more tricky with his movements. Alistar doing a good job setting up in the brush. Maintaining brush control is really key in bot lane usually, but he did give it up there. Karthus primarily is just going to try and farm against Udyr. Doesn't really have the damage output to harass down or kill Udyr, because Udyr's just going to shield, just going to throw in those health potions and be perfectly fine in this lane. He did start Cloth's armor, so he will have tons of health regen throughout this laning phase. So Karthus is primarily going to look to farm. This actually might have been a good chance for Karthus to go back, even though it's very early, get out an early ward to protect against Gangplank. You see Olaf finishing his jungle, so a good jungle clear time. Olaf is a very fast jungler, even if you don't see him that often. His general issue is not the strongest champion through kind of the middle portion of the game. He's got great damage output early, and late he's, you know, just a fantastic kind of DPS carry. But you know, other junglers are a little bit safer. He does get pretty low HP, so burst teams can kind of take him down. I'd be interested to see where Gangplank is, but it seems that he just did a regular jungle clear, so he's probably recalled as well, about the same speed as Olaf. Gangplank's actually a slower jungler than Olaf, but he definitely has a little bit stronger ganks. And here's Gangplank coming in on Karthus. Udyr's trying to get the stun. He didn't get the stun, and there's the stun. They are able to pick up the kill. First blood onto Karthus. You know, again, you really need to get a ward out early, especially as a champion like Karthus, where you don't have a great escape. It's really difficult to lane, you know, without that escape against such a strong jungler as Gangplank with his ganks. Now, Olaf is pretty strong with ganks also, but Gangplank is just, you know, terrifying. He's got the raise morale for the speed buff, and he's got the inherent slow. Well, Olaf, if he can't get in, he kind of needs to get into melee range, and he needs to hit his first axe. If he hits his first axe, then there's not really any escape from Olaf. He's just going to chase you down with another axe and the red buff, since they do refresh when he picks them up. It's essentially a 1-second cooldown. But if he cannot get in range for that axe, and it's pretty easy to dodge that axe usually, that first axe, then it's not really the easiest gank. It won't be successful. Karthus may try, it's pushing into Karthus, so Olaf might come from the river, but as this progresses, I would expect it would be a little bit easier if Karthus pushed up a little bit, let Olaf get into this back brush as the wave's pushing back into him. So we'll see if we do that later. It's really probably the strongest gank to be able to come up the lane, because generally at this level people will ward the brush, or will ward the rivers. And Olaf going Vampiric Scepter, Olaf is going Madreds, whereas Gangplank is going Vampiric Scepter. So Gangplank will be able to sustain himself in the jungle at this point with Cloth Armor and Vampiric Scepter, but we'll need to watch out. I don't know if they have any wards yet. Sona does have a ward, so they must know that Olaf is there. And Alistar trying to slow him down. Sona almost running into that trap. Sona will have to use the flash, so they did do a good job of burning the flash, but I'm not sure how successful that gank was ever going to be. But anyway, you know, already to begin with, Gangplank's a slower jungler than Olaf. Well, Olaf started off with Madred's Razors, so he's going to just be clearing the creeps very quickly. It might be prudent of him to just focus on farming at this point, and trying, you know, counter jungle some and just clear creeps very quickly. He does have his creep camps up, rather than being so aggressive with ganking, since his lanes should be okay. And the reason behind that is Gangplank, he does have great sustain in the jungle now, but he is going to be far slower than Olaf is, with that Madreds and with that inherent speed that Olaf has. And the Gangplank ultimate coming on. Tristana with the great burst. Caitlyn flashes away. Alistar pulverizing and headbutt into the tower. Gangplank's able to run down Caitlyn, get that kill. And Alistar, I don't know if he's going to be able to escape. Does he have his flash? There is the flash. I wasn't sure if he had used it a little bit earlier. So he is able to get out. They, again, really need a ward coverage here. You know, they have the ward. They were kind of expecting Gangplank to maybe come down the river. But the one thing that I think a lot of people neglect with laning against Tristana is Tristana actually does have fantastic burst early game. She can't really use it as well in early team fights, because it forces her to get into melee range. However, if in those 1v1 or, you know, 2v2 situations, those small fight situations, Tristana can jump on top of you, and while in midair, Tristana can throw down her dot and throw down their ultimate, as well as throw in an attack. So Tristana does close to 1,000 damage right now burst. She didn't hit her jump on top of Caitlyn, so she missed out on that damage, but still, with the ultimate and with Gangplank's ultimate, or she didn't actually use the ultimate, with Gangplank's ultimate, they were able to take Caitlyn down, even though Tristana was only level 5. Udyr is building towards Wriggles, so I was kind of wondering if maybe he would skip it, since it would be difficult for Karthus to harass him, but you know, he wants to play a long laning phase, and I would have thought they would want to kind of push out of the lane a little bit faster, but Wriggle's definitely a fantastic item on Udyr. You can't really question it. I just was considering if he would buy some bigger items. But with that Wriggles, Karthus really won't be able to harass him out of lane at all. Udyr can kind of make hell for Karthus. And Karthus is actually going to miss this creep wave. Udyr's pushing it into the tower. He might get back for some of it. He's actually the creeps are just going to protect it, so he won't miss that many creeps, which is good. Taking a look at the CS, we see that Caitlyn and Tristana is very even. Caitlyn is slightly ahead, though Tristana was part of that kill on Caitlyn a second ago. And looking at mid, Cassiopeia versus Galio. Galio actually doing a fantastic job of farming. I'm really surprised. You did see actually Galio right there came down and cleared the Wraiths, and he's one of those champions that can do that. He does have the good mana regen with the Chalice, so he can clear the lane creeps and then come down and just really fast nuke the Wraiths, steal it from the enemy jungler, and further increase his CS. But really a fantastic job of farming. He's beating Cassiopeia by 20 CS, and Galio, once farmed, can really take control of the fight slayer in the game. Karthus also doing a good job, up by 15 CS on Udyr, so, you know, overall, PG, Phaeton Gaming, is taking control of this early game with their farm, and that'll, you know, potentially lead to a nice item advantage as the game progresses. You know, they didn't have the strongest laners. I definitely think that TGF had stronger laners, so it's a little surprising to see they're ahead in CS. And you see Gangplank coming up top. It seems like he's kind of hesitant. He doesn't know exactly where he wants to go. I think he wanted to gank top, but he was concerned because it's pushed under the tower. Karthus will have to watch out, but he did see him. Olaf is coming up to potentially countergate. Actually, Olaf's going to ignore it and clear his Wraiths. Karthus should be okay. I really wouldn't want to gank Karthus under his tower. You do have the benefit of Karthus being very squishy. So, with Udyr's stun and then Olaf's or Gangplank's damage, they could potentially kill him, but you see Gangplank backing out. He knows that there's not really anything for him to do here. He's actually coming back up, really trying to be aggressive. So, but Karthus had vision there, so he will know that Gangplank's there. And the ultimate coming out from Gangplank. Karthus, can he get the slow off? There's the slow. Actually, Karthus is going to go down very quickly. I'm surprised that they were able to get in range as fast as they were. He maybe should have played a little bit further back. Olaf coming and dealing his damage. Karthus had already, you know, thrown down all of his damage, but I'm a little surprised he didn't ult to kind of give Olaf that benefit here in that lane. And Cassiopeia throwing down great harass onto Galio, but he does have the MR buff from his shield. That will help him out in lane some. And some harass going back and forth between Caitlyn and Tristana. Olaf doing a good job of picking up the CS in the lane. And the ultimate from Cassiopeia goes off onto Galio. He will flash away, but the ignite's on him. He's got a poison ticking. How much? Oh, he just barely surviving, I'm assuming. He's probably at around like 200 health. He will recall here. I don't even think he can stay for these creeps. He might nuke them out of range, but, you know, 275 creeps, so he will nuke them and then recall. Almost a kill. And the ultimate from Caitlyn, it will be blocked by Sona, but Karthus' ultimate, I don't think it has enough damage. And Tristana surviving by like 35 HP. Really close. You know, just a little tick more. Caitlyn is low, but Gangplank isn't bottom. His ultimate isn't up, so they are safe for a little bit. They could probably push one more wave and then recall. They are actually going to recall now, which is a smart decision. You know, you want to recall often, and really any time you're in a poor situation, you want to recall. And they are potentially also worried about Tristana's burst, and then Cassiopeia is actually missing from mid, so definitely a good decision there.